Today we're looking at Unit Standard 26150, Demonstrate Knowledge of Methods of Sale of Real Estate in New Zealand. Regardless of the method of sale, properties are generally marketed under two key categories, with a price and without a price. Firstly, let's look at who can carry out auctions if they do not have an auctioneer's licence. The Real Estate Agents Act says that under Section 49, a branch manager and a salesperson can perform an auction on behalf of an agent, and Section 48 outlines the authorised activities of an agent. Section 8 explains the exemptions for licensed auctioneers. The Auctioneers Act 2013 explains who can be an auctioneer under Section 5, and Section 24 deals with the offences under this Act. Sale of real estate by auction is an example of marketing without a price. It's an effective method of selling real estate, but there are many stages to the process. There are both advantages and disadvantages of sale by auction. You need to be familiar with these so that you can make sure the property and the market suit the auction process. Sometimes a customer may make an early offer on a property. This is called a pre-auction offer and is only allowed if the advertising material has the notation "unless sold prior" on all advertising. Note that there is an REINZ best practice guide for pre-auction offers. You can access that on the portal. The particulars and conditions of sale of real estate by auction, the auction form, needs to be accurately filled out before the auction. Information such as the property details, the settlement date, etc. The REINZ Best Practice Guide for Auction, the Auction Form, and the Real Estate Agents Act, Professional Conduct and Client Care Rules 2012, outline the process that you should follow. You will be expected to be able to explain the process to the client or vendor. Here's the sequence. Prior to auction, you will have met your obligations under the agency agreement, the marketing and advertising, and setting the reserve price. During the auction, during bidding, what happens on the reserve price being met, and at the completion of the auction. After the auction, the signing of documents, what does this entail? Potential purchasers need to complete certain tasks in readiness to bid at auction. You need to make sure they understand how an auction works. For example, the deposit is required straight away, and have they got a lawyer? Sometimes a potential purchaser can't pay the required 10% deposit, so there are two things you need to do. One is to get the variation agreed to by the vendor in writing, and the second is specified in clause 2.8b on the auction form. The vendor, purchaser and the licensee must ensure that the GST details are accurately recorded on the auction form. If a property doesn't sell at auction, then we have a three-step process that we follow, and if there is still no offer, we simply keep the marketing going but advertise it with a different sale method. Choosing an auction means we need to look to see if it suits the market, the seller and the property situation. Advantages and disadvantages of sale by auction. Let's now look at tender. Sale of real estate by tender is another method of sale without a price. You will need to explain the advantages and disadvantages of this method of sale to your client vendor. Make sure you consider the market, seller and property situation before suggesting the appropriateness of tender as a method of sale. The tender itself is the offer or the purchase price which must be stated on the sale of real estate by tender form. When a customer submits a tender, they attach a cheque for the deposit and put it in a sealed envelope and place it in a tender box where it sits until the closing of the tender. All tenders are opened at the same time with the vendor present. Read the REINZ Best Practice Guide for Tenders or your trainee guide to find out about your responsibilities in the tender process. Submitting a tender has many details: the purchase price, the deposit, confidentiality, and the closing date and time. Extending the closing date and time, and how does this affect the GST? What could happen if the deposit is not paid? Methods of sale without a price. There is a basic principle or concept behind marketing a property without a price. It is finding a seller and a buyer who are both willing to accept the offer the other person has made. Examples include price by negotiation and expressions of interest. Methods of sale with a price. This sets a clear level of expectation of what the client or vendor is hoping to achieve. Sometimes properties with prices can result in a multi-offer. That is when two or more buyers want to purchase the property. If this is the case, then there is a best practice process that needs to be followed. Again, you can find a copy of this in the portal. There are 2 rules in the code that set out the requirements regarding the licensee having to meet the expectations of a client when advertising a property without a price. Mortgagee sales. The mortgagee sale process is set out in Section 119 and Section 120 of the Property Law Act. This type of sale differs from a traditional sale. The terms and conditions under which a property is offered for a mortgagee sale have 3 key differences. Sometimes a mortgagee property cannot be viewed prior to the auction, which makes it difficult for the prospective purchaser. Therefore, it is very important that the purchaser understands their responsibility in doing their own due diligence prior to the auction. The mortgagor also has some options before the fall of the hammer. In terms of our obligations, there are legal requirements that a licensee needs to be aware of regarding their conduct when carrying out real estate work. The Fair Trading Act 1986, Section 9 prohibits misleading or deceptive conduct by a person in trade. Section 14 of the Fair Trading Act 1986 prohibits making false representations in relation to land. Sections 72 and 73 of the Real Estate Agents Act outline the type of licensee conduct that is defined as unsatisfactory conduct or misconduct. Rules 7.1 and 7.2 outline your responsibilities if another licensee demonstrates unsatisfactory conduct or misconduct. When you completed Unit Standard 23135, you'll recall that the customer had rights under Sections 6 and 7 of the Contractual Remedies Act 1979. That highlighted the remedies a client or customer may be entitled to when a mistake is made. An example would be when a party is induced to enter a contract through a misrepresentation. Well, that's pretty much it. In conclusion, make sure you thoroughly familiarise yourself with the contents of the trainee guide, which should assist you in completing Unit Standard 26150.